presenting the summation of history, theory, and practice, no, introduction to environmental planning. So as we mentioned earlier, no, the two strands that created, no, the pre-industrial foundations, they were exposed, no, by Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed New York Central Park. I repeated this because this is a favorite board exam question, no, yung name at saka ano yung na design niya. And you have also si Edwin Chadwick, no, a visionary Edwin Chadwick, who made in the 1840s explicit connection between these filthy environments and disease, no, in London. And he championed yung sanitary reform. Remember these two persons, no? Edwin Chadwick, he's British, and you have yung American visionary landscape architect. You have Frederick Law Olmsted, who designed New York Central Park. Then yung early conservation movements approaching the 20th century, the focus expanded from the city to the wilderness, no? Then saw the relentless exploitation of America. This period saw the rapid industrialization of America, its exploitation, its forests, minerals, and wildlife becoming very alarmingly visible. This sparked the first great conservation debate, personified by two key figures. Natandaan natin to. The two key figures, they're in public debate. You have John Muir and Gifford Pinchot. Muir, a passionate preservationist who founded the Sierra Club in 1892, advocated for the intrinsic value of wilderness. Now, he believed nature should be protected for its own sake and for spiritual human renewal, a philosophy that led to the creation of the natural park system. Lumabas sa board exam to, ha. In contrast, Pinchot, the first head of the U.S. Forest Service, was a utilitarian conservationist. He famously believed in the greatest good for the greatest number for the longest time. So this is the utilitarian principle, greatest good for the greatest number, promoting the scientific management of resources for sustainable human use. This tension between preservation and conservation remains a central theme in our field. Then fast forward, mid-20th century, post-World War II era brought unprecedented economic growth and suburban sprawl, but with a dark side. You have severe, widespread environmental degradation. A pivotal moment came in December 1952, when the Great London Smog, a lethal combination of industrial pollution and weather, killed an estimated 12,000 people. No, lumabas sa board exam to. No? I'm just placing it here. This was a shocking, visible crisis. A decade later, in 1962, marine biologist Rachel Carson, several times, this name, no, remember this name, several times, no, sa board exam to, published Silent Spring, a book that fundamentally changed the public consciousness. Carson meticulously documented how the pesticide DDT traveled up the food chain, causing collateral damage to wildlife, particularly birds, and potentially to humans. She challenged the narrative of unquestioned technological progress and introduced the world to the concept of ecology, the interconnectedness of all living things. Her book is widely credited with sparking the modern environmental movement. Alongside these public awakenings, a crucial intellectual shift was occurring within planning and science itself, the rise of systems thinking. Lumabas din to, no? planners and ecologists began to reject the idea of a city or a region as simply as a collection of separate parts. Residential here, industrial there. Instead, they started to see these places as complex, interconnected systems. A city functions like a living organism with flows of energy, water, materials, and waste. Disrupting one part of the system, for example, by paving over wetland, has cascading effects elsewhere, like increased flooding downstream. This holistic perspective was revolutionary. It moved us away from tackling problems in isolation and laid the essential groundwork for books like the Environmental Impact Statement. Now, remember this? Nagsimula pa, US kwanto, no? US invention or creation, Environmental Impact Statement, which requires us to consider the cumulative and interconnected consequences of our actions before we take them. Then dito na tayo, no? 1970s, just half a century ago, where there's a public outrage, no? And scientific understanding of the 1960s crystallized into monumental legislative action in the 1970s, often called the Environmental Decade. It began with the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA. No? Favorite question dito sa board exam. Signed into law by President Nixon on January 1, 1970. NEPA was a game changer. It established a national policy for the environment and required federal agencies to produce a detailed environmental impact statement. Dito nagsimula yung EIS natin sa NEPA yan, ha? For any major project. This look, no, before you leap. No, favorite din to na question. Mandate forced the government to consider environmental costs. NEPA was swiftly followed by a wave of powerful laws. The Clean Air Act of 1970, US to, the Clean Water Act of 1972, US din to, and the Endangered Species Act of 1973. These laws created the regulatory backbone that to this day protects our air, water, and biodiversity from uncontrolled degradation. And dito, no, sa slide na to, daming mga kwanto, no, questions sa mga previous board exam. Yung emergence of what we call the sustainable development paradigm. By the 1980s, no, a new global framework was needed to reconcile economic development with environmental protection. This was provided by the World Commission on Environment and Development. Lumabas din to, no? Led by Gro Harlem Brundtland of Norway. Lumabas din to, no? In its landmark 1987 report, Our Common Future, is a good book also, no? One of the early books na nabili ko rin when I was a student. Also known as the Brundtland Report, it provided the seminal and enduring definition of sustainable development. Dito nagsimula, no, class, yung concept ng sustainable development dito sa book na to. The report defined it as development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the future generations, no, to meet their own needs. Ito yung classic na definition of sustainable development, no, meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. So this was a powerful, no, ethical concept that moved beyond mere conservation. It explicitly linked social equity, economic development, and environmental protection, arguing that you cannot have one without the other. This paradigm became the new overarching goal for planners worldwide, shaping international policy for decades to come. Then we have yung kuana, no? Yung global attention na, global awareness, where sustainable development demanded a global stage. The first major step was 1972, no, United Nations Conference on the Human Environment, held in Stockholm. The first world conference to make environmental issues a major international concern. It puts the issue firmly on the global political agenda. 20 years later, 1992, Earth Summit, where, no, saan? In Rio de Janeiro, in Brazil. It was a monumental event, attracting leaders from 172 nations. It led to key agreements like Convention on Biological Diversity and the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. This framework led to the Kyoto Protocol. Pabalik-balik din to, no, na tinatanong, in 1997, which set binding emission reduction targets for developed countries. And later, after Kyoto Protocol, you have the Paris Agreement in 2015, which for the first time united all nations in a common cause to combat climate change. Environmental planning was no longer a local issue, but a global imperative. As the impact of climate change have intensified, a new concept has emerged to complement sustainability. That term is resilience. Now, after sustainability, resilience. While sustainability aims to maintain systems in a state of balance, resilience theory, heavily influenced by the work of ecologists. Ito, lumabas din to, no? Initials yung kanya, ecologist C.S. Holling in the 1970s, prepares us for disruption. It focuses on the capacity of a system, be it a coastal city or a community, to absorb shocks like hurricanes, floods, or heat waves, and to reorganize and adapt without losing its essential function. With the increasing frequency and severity of climate-related disasters, planning for a static ideal state is no longer sufficient. Now, we must now plan for uncertainty and build systems that are flexible, robust, and able to bounce forward, not just back. This means designing infrastructure, economies, and social networks that can withstand and learn from disturbance. Then the rise of environmental justice. Now, parallel to these global developments, a critical social movement was taking root, challenging the very fairness of environmental protection. The environmental justice movement began in the late 1970s and 1980s, driven primarily by grassroots activists in communities of color. No, sa atin dito, ano bang pinakasikat na kaso ngayon involving environmental justice? No? You have the Manila Bay case filed by mga citizens, no, in the city of Manila, suing government. No? Imagine, kinasuhan yung gobyerno to clean up Manila Bay, no, at saka Pasig River. Parang a dozen government agencies, no, ang kinalaban ng mga ordinary citizens, no. Pagkatapos another case dito sa Philippines na medyo also proponent ng environmental justice, yung Oposa, no, versus Pactoran, where in that case, no, the Supreme Court recognized the right, no, of minors and children yet unborn, no, to question government action. First impression yan kasi naging kwan din yan sa other countries, naging leading case din yan. Na imagine yung mga minors, no? 'Di ba yung mga papanganak pa lang, meron silang karapatan, no? To challenge government or status quo. But even before yung ano to, even before yung Oposa versus Factora, no, at saka yung Manila Bay case, andito na nagsimula na rin yung movement ng environmental justice. No, the event was in 1982 in Warren County, North Carolina, where a protest against a toxic waste landfill, no, in a predominantly black community ignited a national conversation. Doon nagsimula, no, sa North Carolina. Studies, including a landmark 1987 report by the United Church of Christ, confirm a disturbing pattern. Hazardous waste sites were disproportionately located in minority and low-income communities. Doon nilagay sa mga mahihirap, no? Mga disadvantaged na communities. This movement forced planners to ask not just what the environmental impact is, but who bears the burden. It reframed environmental issues as issues of civil rights and social equity, no? Making justice a non-negotiable pillar of modern environmental planning. So let's just have some mga quick summary. No? Actually, mahahaba to sa mga textbook. Sinasummarize lang natin. No? So, to summarize, over a century of evolution, we see several profound shifts. First, the scope has expanded dramatically from tackling local public health crises to controlling global existential threats, no, like climate change. Second, our core goal has evolved from simple conservation, no, of resources to the more integrated and ethical framework of sustainable development. Third, our approach is changing from applying technical fixes to single problems to managing complex interconnected social economic systems for resilience. Fourth, the process has been transformed. No, it's no longer a top-down expert-led endeavor, but an inclusive community-driven process that prioritizes equity. And finally, no, as part of our summation, our view of nature has shifted from seeing it as something separate to be managed to understanding that humanity is an integral part of a single interconnected biosphere. This history sets the stage for the theories we'll discuss next. Okay, after we just summarize, no, class, yung history. Then let's start with yung summation of yung theories na after history. So yung nagsimula, 'di ba, yung mga sanitary reforms sa ano to sa England, no, legacy of 19th century sanitary reform cannot be overstated. It established a fundamental principle that government has a critical role to play in safeguarding public health through environmental management. The sewers, no, and water mains built in London, Paris, and New York in the mid-1800s became the unseen circulatory system of the modern city, preventing diseases and enabling higher densities of safe living. This was a profound success story that set a powerful precedent for public intervention. It forged an undeniable link between a clean environment and human health, moving beyond seeing pollution as a mere nuisance to recognizing it as a lethal threat. This foundational belief that Our surroundings directly impact our well-being is the very bedrock upon which all modern environmental planning and public health policy is built. Okay, ito, this powerful book, no? The publication of Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. Again, class, no? Ulit-ulit ko sa inyo to. Kung hindi nyo makuha sa board exam to, this is a bonus question na, no? This seminal book has been asked many times, no, sa board exam natin. Rachel Carson, Silent Spring, in 1962, stands as a testament to the power of a single idea to change the world. Sino ba si Carson? No? Si Carson was a meticulous scientist, no? Gifted writer, and demonstrated that the poison of pesticides like DDT, no? DDT, lumabas din to, anong pesticide, DDT, didn't just kill larger insects. It traveled up the food chain, accumulating in the tissues of birds, no, and other wildlife, potentially silencing the dawn chorus of spring. Carson directly challenged the post-war dogma of unchecked technological progress, arguing that we were launching a reckless war against nature itself. The book, no, The Silent Spring, first serialized in the New Yorker, empowered the public with accessible scientific knowledge and sparked a firestorm of debate that reached the highest levels of the U.S. government, directly leading to the ban of DDT and the creation of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. No, mabigat yung ginawa ni Rachel Carson, no, sa book niya na Silent Spring. Then ito, several times, no, lumabas sa board exam, yung NEPA. Itong mandate na look before you leap mandate. Now, when President Richard Nixon signed the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, on January 1, 1970, he enacted what is often called the nation's environmental Magna Carta. Its most revolutionary principle was the simple yet profound look before you leap mandate. No? Tandaan nyo to palagi. Look before you leap mandate. For the first time, federal agencies were legally required to stop and systematically consider the environmental consequences of their major actions, like building a highway, a dam, or a new federal complex before shovels hit the ground. This process crystallized in the environmental impact statement. No, kung tanungin sa inyo to, class, bonus na to, saan kinuha yung environmental impact statement? Diyan sa NEPA, no, sa US. Introducing unprecedented transparency, no, gave the public and other agents a right to review and comment, influence, no. So this has influenced so much, no, yung practice of environmental planning in the years to come. That this model of environmental impact statement was adopted by over 160 countries, including the Philippines. No? Naka-embody na rin sa batas natin yan. We'll be discussing yung mga laws. And numerous states embedding environmental consideration into the very fabric of governance. Marami tayong nabigay na dito, ideas. But nakita rin natin sa mga previous na kasi, mga questions. So we put importance sa discussion. Sa summary natin. Then yung Brundtland na Commission na 1987 report, Our Common Future, lumabas din to, no, several times, provided a common language and a moral framework, you know, that the entire world could rally behind. The concept of sustainable development successfully argued that economic development and environmental protection were not mutually exclusive enemies, no, but essential partners. It forced a shift, no, from short-term exploitation to long-term intergenerational thinking. Crucially, it integrated the often ignored social dimension, acknowledging that poverty and inequality are both causes and consequences of environmental degradation. While sometimes criticized for being vague or co-opted by corporate greenwashing, its enduring legacy is its holistic vision. It remains the dominant paradigm for international development. Diyan ba kayo? Masyadong heavy ba, class? Okay lang.
Kailang, sir.
Nasakyan nyo. I'm sure you're familiar naman dito. Now, we're just summarizing. So, naging kwan talaga to, no? Enduring din yung, yung report, no? Brundtland report, yung libro na Our Common Future. Yan na yung mga template ng mga corporate social responsibility, urban planning, no? And yung balance, no? Balance of the triple bottom line. Palaging di-discuss yan. People, planet, and profit. Tatlong P, no? People, planet, and profit. Several times din yan. Lumabas sa board exam. What are the 3 Ps? Okay, then we go to climate change, no? As sa summation natin. Climate change driven by yung what they call anthropogenic greenhouse gas emissions is not just another environmental issue. It is the ultimate global common problem and the defining context for all 21st century planning. Andiyan na yan, climate change, pati corruption sa gobyerno natin, andiyan na rin. No? Related sa climate change, flood control. No? It transcends all borders and scales, making every local action part of a global system. Planners can no longer rely on the stable climate change patterns of the past. We must now operate in a world of increasing uncertainty and extreme weather. This reality demands a two-pronged approach: aggressive mitigation to reduce emissions through energy efficiency, yung mga green building natin, renewable energy, and transit-oriented development, and proactive adaptation, no, to prepare for unavoidable impacts like seawater rise and intense heat. Building societal and infrastructure resilience is the necessary response to this existential challenge, fundamentally altering the goals and methods of our profession. Okay, let's start with yung theory, no? So lumampas na tayo sa summation ng history, we go to theory. The first theory, we have the utilitarian conservation theory. Again, nauna na to class, no? Nag-summarize na tayo before we go into the more detailed discussion. No? Ano ba tong utilitarian conservation theory? Now, who championed this? No, the champion of this theory, famous, no? Champion of this theory is Mr. Gifford Pinchot. Pinchot ba yan? Oh, it's French, no? Let's pronounce it at yung ano yung kwan? Ano yung spelling, no? So Gifford Pinchot, the first chief of the US Forest Service in the early 1900s, no? He viewed nature primarily through the lens of resource management. Sa inyo diyan, di ba? Kung kayo employed kayo sa ano to, no? Sa forestry department natin, no? Ano bang sinabi dito sa utilitarian conservation theory? Its core philosophy is that natural resources, the forest, water, minerals should be managed scientifically and efficiently to provide the greatest good for the greatest number for the longest time. Si Pinchot clashed sharply with preservationists, no, like John Muir, ito na mention natin, over the damming of Hetchy Valley, believing the water supply for San Francisco was a higher use. This anthropocentric, people-centered, when you say anthropocentric, people-centered, or human-centered worldview is the foundation of many government resource management agencies. Di ba? Yan argument palagi kung minsan, no? Summation na natin dito. Ang pinaka-importante yung tao daw, no? It prioritizes sustained yield and human utility. And while it may seem dated, no, its principles of efficiency and long-term planning are still deeply embedded in our approaches to forestry. Yung mga kayo guys, no, into forestry, fisheries, and water resource management today. Again, utilitarian conservation theory exposed by G. Ford Pinchot several times through a board exam. Next theory, rational comprehensive planning model theory. This model, which peaked in the mid-20th century, is the classic technocratic idea of planning. It views planning as a scientific, a political process. Meron siguro sa inyong believe din dito sa theory na to, no? It begins with a clear, definitive statement of goals and objectives. Diba? Pagkaba ng mga CLUP natin, no? The planner then identifies all possible alternative courses of action to achieve these goals. Each alternative is rigorously evaluated, often using tools like cost-benefit analysis to quantify its consequences. Finally, the planner selects the single most rational, optimal, and efficient alternative. Now, this model promises objectivity and comprehensiveness. Yung mga scientific sa atin dito, no? Palaging ginagamit to. This model promises objectivity and comprehensiveness. And it underpins many of our technical processes, such as environmental impact assessment. However, it operates on the often flawed assumption that we can have perfect information and that societal goals no, are universally agreed upon, no, ignoring the messy realities of politics and conflicting values. O, kayo sa government, na-appreciate nyo to, no? Na iba yung reality, no, on the ground. Although this is still one of the mainstream na mga tools na ginagamit ng mga planners natin, there are mga critics, no, to this approach. While it's logically appealing, the rational comprehensive model faces severe critics in practice. First criticism niya, it's impossible to identify all alternatives or predict all consequences. In a complex world, no, run by government, people, and politicians, the model is paralyzed by uncertainty. Second, it pretends to be value neutral. No, but the selection of goals and the weighing of cost and benefits are inherently political, no, and value-laden process. Diba? Kahit ayaw natin, politics talaga sometimes take the central role. No, third, it can be slow, expensive, and undemocratic. Now, concentrating power in the hands of technical experts like planners, no, like us, planners, while marginalizing community voice and local knowledge. In real-world situation, characterized by conflict and limited information, this model often fails. No? It separates facts from values when in reality they are deeply intertwined. This has led to the development of more collaborative and communicative planning models. Ito, yung next. Maraming gumagamit nito, no? Yung ecological modernization theory. Now, we're into summation of theories na emerging in the 1980s and 1990s. This ecological modernization presents, no, a more optimistic reformist theory. No, it argues that the conflict between the economy and the environment is a relic of an older industrial era. Sa totoo lang naman, no, in the modern world, according to this theory, environmental protection and economic development can be mutually reinforcing. Meron na. Marami din sa atin dito, no, na gumagamit nito. Ang theory na to. No, pollution is recast as inefficiency. For instance, no, wasted resources and wasted money. Therefore, according to this theory, for example, pollution, innovation in green technology, circular economy principles, and smart policy can create win-win scenarios that boost competitiveness while reducing environmental impact. This theory explicitly rejects the zero growth limitation suggested by some deep ecologists. It is the intellectual backbone of concepts like green growth and the business case for sustainability. So meron tayo yung mga proponents nito, no, na they're also strong in business, no, they want growth, but they're also proposing yung green, no, na mga technology. They are supporters of this what we call ecological modernization theory. Kasi sabi ng yung ecological modernization, yung capitalism naman can be harnessed to solve, no, not just cause environmental problems. So we have another one, yung smart growth in practice. The most direct and visible application of ecological modernization theory in urban planning. Ito yung ginagamit ngayon ng mga planners. It is a direct response to the documented negative impacts of suburban sprawl, habitat loss, air pollution, and massive infrastructure costs. Yung principles of smart growth, no, promoted by organizations like Smart Growth Network since the 1990s, include creating compact mixed-use neighborhoods where people can live, work, shop within walkable area. Ito yung sa mga developers natin, yung mga sikat na developers natin, yung Mega World, for instance, yung mga township nila. So parang ganito yung ganitong concept ng development. No, it prioritizes investing in public transit and preserving open space and farmland by focusing new development in existing urban centers and creating more efficient land use patterns. Smart growth aims to achieve environmental goals, no, like reduce car dependency and protected ecosystems, while also creating more vibrant, economically resilient, and socially connected communities. So again, no, may mga developers tayo na they're practicing this. No, yung mga, as I mentioned, yung Mega World is famous for this, yung mga townships niya, mga walkable na mga spaces. Then, meron ding medyo sa other ko, medyo extreme, no, yung deep ecology radical view. Kasi I included this because lumabas sa board exam din to. No, sino yung proponent nito? Proposed by yung Norwegian philosopher. He is Arne Naess. No? Arne Naess in 1973 pa. But ito yung theory niya. Deep ecology offers a fundamental challenge to the human-centered, anthropogenic, human-centered views of most other theories. Bakit human beings lang palagi? What about the other living things? Challenge to the human-centered views of most other theories, no? Naes distinguish between shallow environmentalism, which seeks to manage nature for human benefit, and deep ecology, which recognizes the intrinsic value of all living beings, regardless of their utility to humans. O nga naman, no? Bakit tao lang? What about the other human beings or living things, no? This biocentric or ecocentric worldview sees humans as just one thread in the rich tapestry, no, of of life, no? Hindi lang tayo lang, not necessarily tayo yung masters. So this theory advocates for a radical rethinking of our lifestyles, economies, and population levels to significantly reduce, our impact on planet Earth, while rarely providing a direct blueprint for city planning. Mahina naman sa planning na ang view na to. Yung deep ecology profoundly influences deep green preservation ethics, no? The radical wing of the environmental movement and the growing rights of nature legal framework. Growing na rin to, no? May mga proponents din to. And this one, siguro medyo malapit-lapit sa inyo to, no? Look at this closely, class, no? Yung political ecology na theory. Ano ba to? No? Political ecology emerged, matagal na rin to, no? From the critical geography and anthropology in the 1970s and 80s. Insists, no, that we cannot understand environmental issues without analyzing power. Totoo ba to? No? Yung environmental issues are linked with power. Now, this theory argues that environmental problems like deforestation, water scarcity, no, pollution are not neutral or natural phenomena. Totoo naman, no? They are outcomes of social, economic, and political processes. Sa mga proponent na to, nag-ask ng critical question, who has the power to control resources? No? Sino ba yung mga kongresista natin na may hawak ng mga pera? No? To simplify it, no? And then subject to abuse pala, no? Who benefits from their exploitation? And who bears the cost? So political ecology reveals that scarcity is often socially produced. For example, no, when water is diverted from poor communities to affluent agri-business. Diba? Nangyayari yan? O diba yung mga housing pa natin, housing na project, dinadivert yung tubig kasi kung i-follow mo yung batas natin, irrigated, non-negotiable, no? Non-negotiable yung conversion. But powerful yung mga mga developer, dinadivert yung tubig. Para pag-check ng pag-check kunwari ng NIA, wala nang irrigation canal, no? And therefore, pwede na siya i-convert. Ganito yung sinasabi ng political ecology na to, no? It links local environmental conflicts to global economic systems and trade policies, providing the essential academic foundation for the arguments made by the environmental justice movement. Iba naman yung kalaban niya kabila, environmental justice, no, na movement. Next natin pag-uusapan itong environmental justice theory, fair treatment for all people. Are you there ba, class? Are you following me sa discussion?
Yes, sir.
Naintindihan nyo ba? This is summation, no? As we go along sa kwan, may detalye na. So I'm saying I'm summarizing our course in 2 to 3 meetings pagkatapos we go into the details. So dito naman sa history, tapos na tayo. We're going to sa theory. We'll be going also yung Philippine experience, no? After yung global, may summation din tayo sa Philippine environmental planning practice. So dito muna, no? I'm giving you the forest muna. No? Yung strategy ko, I'm giving you the forest before we go into the trees. Then we go back to the forest at the end of the yung SEM natin. So environmental justice theory, no, is both a social movement, no, and a theoretical framework that directly applies the insights of political ecology, kamag-anak niya, no? Environmental justice sa political ecology. Its core principle, formalized at the first National People of Color Environmental Leadership Summit in 1991, is the pursuit of fair treatment and meaningful involvement for all people, regardless of race or income, with respect to environmental laws and policies. No, ang ganda, no? Ang ganda ng kanya. Fair lahat, no? Fair treatment means that no group should bear a disproportionate share of negative environmental consequences. Meaningful involvement requires that communities have a real seat at the decision-making process. This theory focuses on both distributive equity, no, distributional equity, the fair share of burdens and benefits. Ganda ng theory niya, no? And procedural equity, the fairness of the decision-making process itself. It asserts that justice is not a secondary goal, but a fundamental prerequisite for achieving true sustainability. Okay, andyan na tayo, no? Next na theory natin after that, no, yung because of the complex adaptive systems, hindi na ganoon ka-simple yung mundo, no? According to this view, no, yung theoretical perspective na to, drawn from ecology and complexity science, fundamentally changes how we view cities and regions. Hindi na ganoon ka-simple. Instead of seeing them as complicated but predictable machines, we now understand them as complex adaptive systems. Maganda din to, no? Tingnan nyo how you solve yung mga problema ng sa mga opisina, no? Lalo na diyan sa BARM. You may want to apply this theory, simply not political ecology lang, o di ba, environmental justice. Instead of seeing them as complicated, no, but predictable machines, we now understand them as complex adaptive systems. These systems are dynamic, non-linear, and self-organizing. They are made of many interconnected agents. You have people, companies, organisms that constantly interact and adapt to each other and their environment. A key feature is that small local actions can cascade through the system to build large, unpredictable, and emergent outcomes. Now, for example, think of how a simple or a single traffic jam can disrupt a city's entire commute. This view forces planners to abandon the illusion of top-down control and predictability, and instead to think in terms of influencing and steering the system's inherent capacity for adaptation and self-organization. Okay. Then, the last slide before I'll be giving your quiz, no? Just to test muna kung nakaka-cope ba kayo sa lectures natin. This is the last slide before we have your quiz. This resilience theory na principle. Di ba kanina we discuss yung sustainable development, sustainability. Sabi naman, hindi naman sustainable palagi, dapat resilient ka rin. Ano naman to? Building on the concept of complex adaptive systems, Resilience theory. Sino nag-pioneer ng resilience theory? Pioneered by ecologists. C.S. Holling. He styled himself as ecologist. In his seminal 1973 paper, shifts the primary management goal from optimization to persistence. Okay? The focus is on a system's capacity to absorb disturbance, like a hurricane, a market crash, or a pandemic, and to reorganize while retaining its essential function, identity, and structure. It's the difference between being robust and being brittle. Key principles include fostering diversity, diversity of species, economic sectors, and social networks as a buffer against shocks. It also involves managing connectivity. Too little can cause fragmentation, but too much can allow a shock to spread rapidly. Resilience thinking embraces variability and change as inherent properties of systems, preparing us to manage for adaptation in an uncertain world. So with that, no, we'll end no yung lecture